Welcome to the Weekly Fix, Asia Society's podcast, and this week a special video podcast bringing you headlines out of Asia with expert commentary you can only get here with us. And this week we're literally bringing you inside our doors to give you a taste of some of the business, policy, arts, culture, and education programs we hold. I'm Deanna Lee. Come on in now. It's April 17th. So everybody pretty much knows that North Korea missed the Saturday, the 14th deadline for closing its main nuclear reactor. Now, this was blamed largely on a dispute over $25 million in funds that were frozen in Macau that was part of U.S. sanctions. That looks like it's going to be resolved soon. So what is really next? I'm going to take you in to speak with Dr. Jamie Metzl. He's the Executive Vice President of Asia Society, an Asia expert, and a national security expert. Justina, can we go in and talk to Jamie now?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks. Surprise!
Jeez, I would have cleaned up my desk if I knew that the Blogmaster was coming.
Well, we are actually doing a video podcast now.
Uh-huh.
Nice view.
You know, it's funny. I was reading in the New York Times today that in England they have somebody who's put up a webcam to watch the process of making cheddar cheese, and there are millions of people who are watching this cheese slowly become aged cheese. So,
is there an analogy to what we're doing here?
This is going to be more exciting than that.
Okay. Okay, Jamie, so seriously, how big a deal is it that the deadline was missed?
It's a big deal, but it's not an enormous deal. It's a big deal because in international agreements, trust is so important. And when countries agree that they're going to do something, either they do it or they have to face the consequences. But in this case, because the North Koreans have been absolutely clear from the beginning that their willingness to seal the reactor at Yongbyon is connected to their receiving these $25 million of frozen funds, they have said repeatedly, both publicly and privately, that they will allow the inspectors in and they'll seal the reactors when they receive the money. Because they haven't yet received the money, I would assume that when they do, we're going to see progress. So it's a big deal, but if the money's transferred and if the North Koreans allow the inspectors in within the next few days to a week, I think that it will all pass.
How much are we depending on China? How much are we depending on South Korea at this point?
Yeah, certainly depending a lot on China. Because if the North Koreans, in the end of the day, even after this money is transferred, refuse to participate, then that's a big blow to the Chinese and the Chinese credibility. The Chinese and the South Koreans actually have done a great deal in some ways to protect the North Koreans from a harsher line that others, including the United States, have been advocating. But if the North Koreans, after having detonated a nuclear device, break this agreement even after the funds are transferred, that's going to be a huge slap in the face to the Chinese and to the South Koreans who've been supporting the Sunshine policy of reaching out to the North. And if that happens, we're going to be in a totally different environment where I think both the South Koreans and the Chinese and the Americans and the Europeans are going to support a much harsher stance towards North Korea. And I don't think that we're going to wind up there at this stage.
In other news, there are heated emotions surrounding HIV on a couple of fronts this week. First of all, international healthcare workers are livid at a statement made by Australian Prime Minister John Howard, who has proposed a blanket ban on immigrants coming into his country who are HIV positive. Now, countries including Australia and the U.S. already have regulations on those coming in with communicable diseases, but nothing that goes so far as a blanket ban. Very few countries have this. And in India, one high-profile kiss trumps the issue. It happened at an AIDS HIV awareness event in New Delhi, and it happened when Richard Gere, sort of out of the blue, took Bollywood actress Shilpa Shetty down in a big kiss.
Yes, swept her off her feet, almost. And as a consequence, now both are being burnt in effigy among a number of Indian cities.
Let's introduce you, Pramit Pal Chaudhry, foreign editor of the Hindustan Times and Asia Society, Bernard Schwartz, resident fellow. So, Pramit, explain to us why it's such a big deal. I mean, it doesn't surprise you, I gather.
Well, no, it doesn't surprise me, partly because it isn't that big a deal. When you sit down and look at the number of protests, they were mainly in cities, second-rung cities in India, in the Cow Belt, which is the most conservative part of the country. There were no protests virtually in the south and the east, yeah. And these were the areas where you would tend to have a strong belief in a so-called very traditional Hindu or Indian view that you don't do public acts of intimacy.
Even though it was not like a real kiss, it was just kind of shtick.
It was shtick, but I think, well, two problems. One, it was inappropriate given that it was about an AIDS awareness thing. It would have been about a new television program or a movie promotion. I could see this game being played out. I think that was a little strange. Also, Richard Gere, by Indian standards, I think he's 57 years old,
Right.
would be considered a person old enough to be acting in a certain fashion that this would not be viewed as good. A white gentleman and a person who claims, I mean, Richard Gere always says that India is his second home. So one would assume he would know better that in India that these type of protests, these type of actions are treated with are frowned upon. This, I think, I suspect, will fizzle out very quickly. I don't see this being a major issue. The sad part is that it completely overshadowed the AIDS issue, which is what the point of this entire program was.
It's time now for our segment, Heard at Asia Society. Last week, we had a very special lecture by Dr. Layla Diba. She's one of the foremost scholars of Persian art and was the first female director of a museum in Iran. We are going to present to you now an excerpt from her lecture entitled Eternal Persia, A Visual Odyssey Through 7,000 Years of Persian Art, accompanied by some still photographs from our wonderful Sasanian exhibition currently on view at the Asia Society in New York through May 20th. In fact, what you see behind me is an image of one of the bowls from the late 3rd to the early 4th century. It's one of many great pieces. But anyway, on to Dr. Diba.
Iranian art also has other inherent qualities, which impart a sense of unity and artistic continuity to it, in spite of the vast historical and cultural time span in which it was produced. These include the integration and assimilation of new influences from East or West, the balance between stylization and naturalism, formal values such as the preference for saturated colors, love of intricate design, and sense of fitness of form. Finally, a visual memory which ensured the survival of certain images and forms, archetypes, if you will, such as the royal hunter, the lion, or the ibex, over thousands of years. This is essentially an aristocratic art, as it was primarily the ruler and the governing elite who provided the patronage.
There's a lot more to see and hear at our Asia Society centers around the world this week. Now, since this Sunday is Earth Day, April 22nd, we thought it would be nice to give you an idea of how you can get involved in programs that have to do with our Earth and the environment. And so, we're here with Elaine Megarian to tell us that you are in luck if you're in Texas, right?
Yes, you're definitely in luck. Our Texas Center does a lot of programming on energy issues, actually, and so they'll be having a panel this week sponsored by the Nature Conservancy and ExxonMobil, where they'll talk about is good business, good for the environment.
And that's in Houston?
It is in Houston. It's on April 18th, 11:30 to 2, the Westin Galleria Hotel.
Okay. And if you're in Hong Kong, Ashley Eiler, you're also in luck.
You are. They're going to talk about energy and the environment. And as Asian nations become more and more wealthy, more people can afford vehicles. Energy becomes a bigger question. So they're going to be talking about these kinds of issues. So they're going to be talking about challenges facing Asia and how those challenges are interrelated with global challenges.
And
that's
did
going to
we
be
say when that is?
That's going to be in Hong Kong on the 24th, which is next Tuesday.
And it doesn't stop there. Please check out our website for more on events, resources, other news, and programs. Again, www.asiasociety.org. And finally, also check out Asia Store if you're in New York. I'm wearing a necklace by Kai-Yen Lo, one of our favorite designers. And this necklace is made of Keshi freshwater pearls. I'm also lucky enough to be wearing earrings by Cayenne Low, and these are freshwater mother of pearl. I'm Deanna Lee. Thanks for joining us again, and we hope you'll join us for the Weekly Fix next week.